Well, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. What I want to discuss today is finish the HTML, a couple of things we haven't covered, and then hopefully start introducing CSS, some basics. So far we have seen how to create forms using the form tag. So you go ahead and create a form tag, and inside this form, based on what you want to ask the user to enter, for each piece of information you will use the input tag. And when you create an input tag, based on the data type that you are expecting the user to enter, you choose the appropriate type, such as text, number, email, date, time, week, color, so many others. That you choose the most appropriate one. There are a couple of inputs that special kind of behave that I want to quickly discuss. Sometimes you have some kind of mutually exclusive choice. For example, gender, male, female. Let's say title, Mr., Mrs., Madam, Doctor, Professor, some title like this, one of them, for example. So when you have a mutually exclusive choice, one option from a list of possible options, what type of input you would use? There are two options. Either you can make it a drop down, the select, using a select tag, or you can make it a radio button. So let's first stay with the input tag and just change the type to radio. Okay, so in here I may provide, for example, female, and the value that will be sent to the server will be, for example, F. And I will do the same. I will do the same for the other gender, male, and the value that will be sent will be M. So let's first save this, and let me do Shift right, and let me run this one, opening a live server. Let me. Okay, so here it is. So this is what happened. So when I put this radio, but the type is radio, I get this behave where I can select male or female. But in here, unfortunately, it's not mutually exclusive so far. It allows me to select both, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So how do we make it mutually exclusive, one or the other? What's the trick? Give them the same name. That's basically a trick in the HTML. So I give it a name here, and the name will be, let's say, gender. And here, name equal gender. Save. Give it the same name, and now it becomes mutually exclusive. When you select one, it unselect the others, and vice versa. Now, there is one more problem. When I click this text associated with the radio button, it does not select the option, which is very inconvenient, especially for mobile device. I have to zoom and fiddle around to click the circle. But it will be much more convenient if I just click the text and the associated option is selected. So how do I achieve that? Using label. So label. So I'll give this an ID to be able to associate it with the label. So I give this an ID of email, and I'll give this one an ID of male. And then I'll say, oh, this is a label for female, and it's associated with the input. It is associated with the input having the ID email. And I will do the same for the male radio button. So it's associated with the male input, and the label is male. So I'll save, come here, and you can see when I click on the text, the associated radio button is selected. So label is very, very useful in this regard. we've seen it even for normal inputs. If I have a label associated with the input, when I click on the label, the associated input will get the focus. But in here, when I click on the label, the associated radio button get checked. Is clear? Radio buttons. If we remove value. If we remove value, let's see if you remove value. Okay, remove value. Before we remove it, let me just show you why it is useful first, and then we will remove it and see the behavior. So here I want to submit this form. So what do I need? I'll put here an input of type submit. An input of type submit. Okay. Here action, if I don't specify an action, what is the default behave? What's the default behave if no action is specified? Same URL. So the same, the data that I am submitting will be submitted to the same page I am currently looking at. So that's basically the behave. And by default, so there are two attributes as we discussed last time of the form. There is the action attribute and there is the method attribute. So if I don't specify the action, the default is the current URL, the current page will receive the input. And the method by default is get. So remember how get works when I submit something using get. Yes, thank you very much. But except that when we submit the form, the browser will use the input name, not the ID, the input name to construct a string. So when the form is submitted, it's a very simple way of sending the data. We take the name of the input equal the value the user have entered, and we concatenate a string. We create a string. And if the method of sending the data to the server is get, what do we do with that string? We append it to the end of the URL. And if the method is post, we put it in the body of the request. I will explain this a little bit more, but let's just keep it simple for now. We don't specify anything. We don't specify anything. The action will be the current page, and the method will be get. So let's see what's the behave here. So let me go back here. And when I select, let's say, female and submit, you see here, it took the name of the input equal the value associated with the input. Now, if I remove the name, let's see, first of all, if I remove the name, somebody asked me, if I remove the name, what will happen? I think that piece of input will not be submitted. So let's try with the name, just to answer, see how it works. Let me save and let me go back to the URL here and do, let's say, female submit. You see, it doesn't send that particular input. The input for it to be submitted to the server, it must have an associated name. Otherwise, the browser will say, you don't know what you're doing, or you didn't get your coffee. I cannot help you. I'm not going to submit this input. I will just ignore. Okay, so the name, we know the name now. Now let's put the name back. And this time, let's remove the value. What do you think will happen if we don't specify the value? It will be equal what? Okay, here it is. Okay, so let's try it. For me, I think, for me, I think it will be empty, but let's see. Oh, on. Interesting. Gender on. Unexpected behavior. Anyway, this is how the browser may be part of the standard, or maybe the browser implementers like Google Chrome developers, They will go through the standard, the HTTP standard and the HTML standard, and implement what the standard says. And if the standard is quiet about some problem or about some issue, they may do it their own. I'm not sure if this own is it part of the HTTP standard or is it part of Chrome, what came to their mind, but that's the behavior. You get the name on. It's a bit kind of confusing. If I select mail, it's always on. If I don't select anything, yeah, so you better specify a value, otherwise you get some confusing value, which is on. If I don't see, let's see, good question. Okay, let's see. I don't select anything. Oh, if I don't select anything, nothing gets sent. Okay, so there is no magic here. Either it is in the standard or the developers do it different way. Let's see what the Firefox does. If they do the same thing, if they do the same behave, then most likely it is part of the standard. When I say standard, there is a document, a long, scary document that has all these details. If you want to implement a browser, good luck. You have to go through all this standard and implement all this behavior. Okay, let's submit a query. Interesting. Okay, we didn't select anything, so it sends nothing. We select one, it sends on, part of the standard.
You selected something but it doesn't know what to say.
Yeah, so you selected something, it says on. Anyway, avoid this confusion for you and your users, and more importantly, the poor server that will receive this data, it will not make much sense to them. Gender equal on. Very confusing. So better not to forget the value associated with the radio button. So here the value, it could be whatever. It could be an abbreviation. You could make it female. It's up to you what makes sense in your app. So this is the actual value that will be submitted to the server when the form is submitted by the user. Is clear? Now, if sometimes you don't want mutually exclusive, you may allow multiple choices to be selected. Like in your exam, you will have some questions will have one answer. So which input you will use? Radio button is much better. Which next quiz I will confuse you. I will always put tick boxes. So you decide whether it's 1 or 2 or 3. But for the first quiz, just as a welcoming gesture, so the ones that are check boxes will have one or multiple correct answers. And for the radio button, one. Yes. So if you want to create a checkbox, let's say your favorite languages. You may be Java, C#, Python, JavaScript. So you may have multiple favorite languages. So in that case, same thing, create a label. I will put here for JS, and this is JavaScript. And here I'll create an input of type checkbox. Of type checkbox. And I'll give this an ID. And the ID will be JS. So I'm associating this label with this input. And I don't forget the name. So if I don't provide the name, this will not be submitted. So here, 5 languages, favorite languages. Okay, so this is the name, or just languages, keep it simple. I'll do the same for the value. Don't forget the value. Here, the value, I could just keep it JS. Not required, and it's not, it will be missing. We will try it. It will not be submitted. That's my guess, but we will try it. Okay, so another language is Python, let's say. Just give it an abbreviation, PY, and here this is for PY. and this is PY. Yep. So 3, let's do another one. Okay, C#, and this one C#, and this one is C#. So you know the role of each one, yes? So the ID is to be able, I use it to be able to associate the label with the input. The name is needed for me to be able to submit the value of this checkbox. If I don't put the name, that particular input will not be submitted upon submitting a form. And the value, this is what will be sent to the server if the user selects Python as one of their favorite languages. So let's see. So first, let me save. Let me come back here. All right, here it is. Okay, so let's just submit it as it is. Nothing is selected. Let me just make sure I bring it again. Nothing is selected. Let me submit. If nothing is selected, nothing is set. You need to be careful on this, on the server side. If nothing is sent, which means this is not a required input. This is not required input. If no value, it is not set. It is not, if there is no name, or if nothing is selected, and you submit the form, this is the behavior. Nothing gets sent to the server. Now let's select something. So we select here the gender is female and the languages. Sorry, can you say? No, I think, let me see. Okay, let me see. No, it is. Yeah, there is a value for both. There's a value for both. Okay, so I choose JavaScript and Python as my favorite language and submit. And here is what gets submitted. Just to show you clearly, here is what gets submitted. So the gender equal female, and language is JS, languages is Py. So because I checked it, I checked multiple preferences. So each selection will be submitted as one input that will be received by the server. It's clear so far. Checkboxes, radio buttons, checkboxes. When should you use radio buttons versus checkboxes? Sorry. Radio buttons where it can be one of the values. It cannot be the two values at the same time. Mutually exclusive, and those are non-mutually exclusive. You can have multiple preferences, no problem. Okay, there's one more very common. Let me just first put here, just because we don't have CSS so far, let me just put a new line. So it's a bit nicer. New line, let me save. And here it is, not bad. The other, so in terms of options, when you have a possible options the user can select from, you have now four ways to do it. You have radio buttons. You use it when the choice is mutually exclusive. You have checkboxes when the choice can be multiple choices. And you have drop down or a select drop down. So to create a drop down here, for some reason, the team, or the standard does not use input. So all the inputs so far use the input tag, but for the drop down, they don't use the input tag. They use the select tag. For the select tag, so for example, let's say program, the program that I want to enroll into or to apply to or to transfer to. So here is the program, for example, computer science, computer engineering. And within a select, which is a drop down, I can have options. Again, this is the value that will be submitted, for example, CS. And what the user will see will be computer science. And another option could be CE. This is what gets submitted to the server. And what the user will see will be okay. Another option could be EE, electrical engineering. You get the idea. So if I come back to my browser, you can see here these are the options available to me. When I select computer science and submit, you can see program equals CS. So the value associated with the option is the one that gets submitted to the server when you submit the form. So those are, again, mutually exclusive. You can choose one of them. When should we use dropdown versus radio buzzer? When we have many options, yes, but not too many. Otherwise, it becomes very annoying. I'm sure you have encountered this, especially in the mobile, and they don't give you scroll bar, and you, especially on a mobile device, you have to scroll a few seconds for you to pick what you want. Yes, but if you have small number of choices, 5, 6, 8 is okay. Above that, it becomes very annoying. There's a better way of doing it. I will show you shortly. Okay, now you can make this multi-select if you wish. I'm sure you have seen this maybe in Banner. For me, at least I see it. When we search for courses in the schedule, I can select multiple programs, search for courses. Well, let's do it here. Let's say I can select multiple programs I apply to. So all I do here, I can say here multiple, and this becomes a list I can select from. And here I can put the size. Size is how many options are visible to the user when the page loads. Let's say 5, although I don't have 5 here. And I can also say, oh, this is the default one. So I can come here and say, this is the default one. I can come and say selected. This will be auto-selected when I load the page. So I'll save. Go here. And you can see instead of drop down, now it became a list, a multi-select list. And I can click on control and select multiple. And select all of them if I wish. And when I submit, you can see here, it says program CS and program EE. So it sends that name multiple times based on what you have selected. Is clear? So that's basically the select. It could behave as a mutually exclusive. You select one of them. And if you want to allow multiple selections, you just add the attribute multiple, and it will allow the user to do control and select multiple options that you have in. Now, the inconvenience here, it's not searchable, and it's not, I cannot type my own text. So one way to address this, there is something called, let me take these options. Let me take these options. Sorry, just a second. We'll call it data list. You don't like it? Data list. I'll put these options here, and then I'll give this an ID. These are program options, yes. Then I'll put here an input. Here is my input. And well, let's just type it in input. It's type text. And then I'll go and associate it, a list equals this program options. So I'll associate this input with this data list. And then I can give it an ID if you wish, no need maybe. And I give it a name. Name is apply for example, apply for. Let me see, hopefully it will work. Let me put some line break. And a line break in here. All right, save. Go back. See, I have this input here. It looks like a normal input, but when I put my mouse over it, I can get the suggestions. Not only this, it's a searchable. I can do here science or engineering. It's searchable. Yes, please. Value. No need for that one if you want. I mean, you could. By default, it will show you the value. This is both of them are searchable. It will be the actual input. It will be this one will be sent. So let's try it. Let's see. Is an error. Okay, let's see. Let's see this one. Sorry, which line? Ah, yes, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. All right. So let's save. Let me. Okay. So here I can do. So this is basically a searchable suggested list. I can always put something different. No problem. I can put something different. So these data lists, these are suggestions. You don't need to choose from them, and they are searchable. And that's basically the advantage of this data list. You are not restricted like the select. It acts like a drop down. It acts like also it acts like searchable options. And you can, if you wish, put something different. If you wish, you could put something different. And when you submit, of course, when you submit, this is what gets submitted. Apply for is the actual value that you see in here that we have typed. So you have when you have choices, you have this, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4 options. You have radio buttons for small number of mutually exclusive choices, or if you have a little bit longer list, maybe 8 up to 8, 10, you can go for a drop down. And if you want to allow multiple selections, if you have a small number of choices, you can go for checkbox. If you have many options, you can go for select with with the ability to select multiple elements or multiple options. Now, if you have a long list of options, then drop down is not the best. You know, it's quite annoying to go through it. You may consider using a data list. A data list gives you this ability to search and the ability to type something different, not in the something that is not in the list. Okay, so you choose the most appropriate one, usually based on whether it's mutually exclusive or non-mutually exclusive, and whether you have a large number of options or small number of options. It's clear? Those are the things that we have. What else? These are the main things. The other thing I want to discuss is the action and the method. Remember, we had this discussion. Let's just quickly review what we mean here. There it is. Now, if the action, what does the action represent? This is the destination. Destination there in the real world, some destination out there on the web that will receive this input that the user have typed. Later on, of course, we will write some server-side program that will receive this input and do something with it. For example, create an account and add it to a database, or it will go ahead and let's say for Banner, for example, you can give it the student's ID as a parameter, and it can give you the transcript for that particular student ID. So in here, the action is at the end of the day is a URL. It's an address, is a web address that will receive this input. Now the method, as we discussed, could be either get or post. If you use get, what the browser will do, it will create string that has name equal value, and it will append it to the URL in the action. It will append it to the URL after a question mark. We've seen this, yes? So like this, gender, female, languages, like this part here after the question mark, what do we call this part? Query string. Query string. It's just a term that you need to be familiar with. Every domain has its own terminology that you need to be aware of. So that's query string. Now, remember, the web in a simple way is made up of client. It has a client and server architecture. So the client sends a request and the server generates a response. So that's how the web works. We have the client, typically the browser, sends a request. The server will try to make sense of it and generate some response and send it back to the requester. Now, this communication, for this communication to take place, we need some kind of protocol of communication, some kind of well-defined rules, how the messages that are exchanged, how they are formatted, what type of content they can have. So this protocol that govern the web and kind of makes the web works is which protocol? HTTP protocol. So that's why every web address you have HTTP : / and then the address of the server you're trying to access. So it's just emphasizing, oh, server, wake up, I want to talk to you, and I want to talk to you using this HTTP protocol. Why do we need a protocol?
So everything is standard.
So everything is standard, so some meaningful communication can take place. These are not kind of, let's say, intelligent beings, بالإشارة يفهم, or some different ways of doing it, it will understand you. It's not like intelligent being. So you have to be very precise and very specific what you want. So from a server, when we go to a web server, what are the type of things we can ask from a server? Very good. A web page, an image, a PDF file, video. We call these resources, web resources. How do we ask the server, give me this particular image, QU logo, or give me PDF that has the program details of CS? All right. Now, IP address is the name of the server. Oh, sorry, is the web server. You know, web server at the end of the day is some piece of program that is running in some server, and that server has an IP address, so I can access it. Now, when I access the server, I can specify what thing I want, whether an image or whether it's a web page. And also I need to specify one of the verbs. I need to say, please get me images / QU - logo JPJ. Okay, so this is an example of request. Get followed by the address of the resource that you want. So you cannot use give me or send me or I need from you. You cannot use any of these verbs. You must use get. Yes. Now, sometimes in get, let's say let's say you go to Banner. You go, here I am omitting the address of Banner. You are already on the server. You already put the server name. I want you to give me the schedule. We'll say, what are you talking about? I cannot give you the schedule of everyone. But first of all, you cannot handle too much information. And maybe you don't have even access to everything. You need to be more precise. Say, oh, please give me the schedule for QUID 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9. Now, no problem. The Banner will say, okay, let me go to the schedule database and filter the schedules only for this QUID, and it will return it to you. So here, I'm sending this piece of data to the server to help it generate a meaningful response for me, or give me the transcript. And I can give me the transcript for this particular ID. So sometimes I send a request. This is the resource that I want. I want the transcript, and this is some parameter I want you to consider to filter only the transcript for this particular student. Yes. So another verb that you can do. So a request from the client either is get. Usually get is used for what? For reading, for getting something from the server to basically read it. You're not changing anything on the server. Let's say you want to add a course or drop a course, or maybe create an account, or place an order, or buy a ticket. So those are not a read operation. They are maybe writing something to some database or some file. So in that case, you will use post. So for example, I want to post to add course, and I want you to add for me, by the way, my QUID equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I want ampersand, let's say course code CMPS 350 and section L51, for example. Okay, so when I'm using post, this data will be sent in the body of the request. So in the body of the request, I will add this text. Okay, and then the server will say, okay, no problem. You gave me this information. I will connect to the database and basically add this, the fact that you have added a new section to your schedule. Yeah. So get is for reading, post is for typically for writing or changing or updating things on the server. With get, any pieces of information I send to the server, where do I put them? In the URL after a question mark. And everything that comes after the question mark is called query string. And when I am doing post, where do I send the information? Typically in the body of the request, and the server will go ahead and do something with that data. Okay. So when should we use get? When should you use post? When you have a form like this, a form that you develop, and it comes to this choice. Which one should I use, get or post? No, in general, how do you choose? You flower, get, post, and then the last one. What do you think? Sorry?
Inputting or taking it.
So when you are reading, just reading and getting some data from the server, you use get. When you are changing or updating or creating some new things on the server, you use post. Okay. Now, deeply, if you look deeply, basically get is safe to repeat. No problem. You see here, if I go here, Google, yes, go to Google here. No, not this Google, Google.com. Here it is. Now, when I type here Qatar University, and I click search, what do you think? What will Google page will do? Will it send it on the URL as a GET request, or will it send it as a POST request? GET request. Why do you think this is a good choice that the engineers did? You are not changing anything. You are just getting. So look at this. Look at the URL. Look at the URL here. When I submit, you see here, it puts /search Q Qatar University. Did you see it? Also, it's not specific. Yes, because anything, if you use GET, and what you are sending will be visible to the user on the URL. Okay. And is there any problem if I try this until Maghrib time? Will I get any police coming to me, or something wrong will happen, or no problem? You can do it as many times as you wish. It's safe to repeat, no implications on the real world. Of course, you are wasting some electricity and making the cables and the oceans working hard, but nothing will affect you. But imagine you are doing a booking on Qatar Airways, and you put your credit card details, you put all the details, and you submit. This is the final step. And you are not patient enough and not reading the instructions. You typically, what they say when you submit, don't refresh the page. Okay. Why they ask you not to refresh and to be patient for the request to be processed? Sorry. No, not really. Not really. Sorry.
Will send a new request?
If we send a new request, yes. Then what's the implication of this? No, not really. It's the same data. You are booking, let's say.
Make it twice.
Thank you very much. You may end up with multiple payments charged to your card and multiple seats. One for your bag and one for you. And I don't think you want that. Yeah. So is POST safe to repeat? Not safe to repeat. That's why many times the browser, I'm sure you have seen it, maybe don't pay attention to it, but from today you will pay attention. Even they write it there. And even you try to refresh, the browser will warn you. It will resend the request with the same data. And if the service that you are using is not well implemented, and it cannot detect duplication, it will charge you twice. And you end up with multiple tickets. So that is where, when do you use GET? Mainly for reading and mainly for safe to repeat operations. Yes? Is a reading safe to repeat?
Yes.
No problem. You read it multiple times, you're getting this multiple times. But is POST safe to repeat? In most cases, not safe to repeat. So you need to choose POST when the operation is not safe to repeat. If you repeat, some real world implications will result in some unwanted, sometimes unwanted implications. So if you submit your order twice, you're not patient, you submitted your order to Amazon, and while submitting, you did another submission or refreshed, while the other request already sent and received by the server, and you did it again, you will end up with these two JavaScript books sitting on your desk, and you can't charge twice. And if you want to send it back, then Qatar Post will charge you twice as the cost of the book. So you can with POST. So deeply, this is the difference between the GET and POST, and that's why we have, of course, mechanically, okay, the data goes in the URL for the GET, and the data goes into the body in the POST, but deeply, this is the difference. Is clear? And also, this one, because it's repeatable. Oh, sorry. We'll stop here. Because it's repeatable, you can bookmark this URL, you can share it with others, and they can reuse it. No problem. But with POST, cannot share it. It doesn't make sense to share it. All right, that's it. Let us now go here and just enable this. If you can please just open your quiz. You don't need to use lockdown. Just no need to use lockdown because some student had issues in the last. You can just use a normal browser. I will just make it available. Make it available. That's it. Here it is. Submit. Hopefully you can see it. It's under content, under course content. Password Qatar 2022. There it is. Q uppercase 2022. Okay. Course content, under link course content. If it has a radio button, means there is one answer. There's a checkbox and have multiple answers. Yeah. Course content. No, there is a quiz underneath.
Okay, now, okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
Qatar 2022. Q uppercase. 2022. Q uppercase. Is all fine for everyone?